Welcome to Reco12. This is the Afro-Euro presentation of Reco12, and we will get right into Ursula F's share on the grace of AA in her life. Grateful for Karen and for everybody who makes Reco12 Afro-Euro a possibility. Sit back and enjoy while Ursula and Karen walk through this great topic.
Hi, my name is Ursula. I'm an alcoholic. Been sober now for 1.5 years. My sober date is the 9th of November, 2022. So thank you very much for the opportunity to present to you my experience, strength, and hope. I don't have much experience in sharing, but I'm hoping that whatever words come out of my mouth right now are going to be from God, as I understand Him. What it was like for me, if I reflect back on how things were before, for me, chaos was really running my life. Where there was calm, it was uneasy for me. So I would create chaos in every level. Honestly, if I look back now on life, I did basically run from a ground zero point of view. There was no stopping my tornado. I ruined friendships, I ruined people, I ruined life, I ruined everybody that was around me. And I had no idea I was doing it. I had no reference points, coming from a family where drinking was pretty much the status quo, living in a country where summer was all the time. We were outside having braais, barbecues, and drinking was just part of life. At an early age, I started to realize that drinking did not agree with me. Every time I would have something to drink, I would get very, very sick. But what I didn't realize is only when I found out now is that, drinking wasn't my problem. I probably, inherited the alcoholism from a long time ago in my life, where I can't really explain it to you, but, for me, it was everything else was running my show except me. And I had a good family life. I had wonderful parents. I had children that, I was gifted with a lot of good things in my life. And, somehow things just didn't fit for me. I didn't feel that I belonged. There was this feeling of restlessness, irritable discontent that just seemed to follow me. And I kind of didn't really know where it was stemming from. And during the times where I was literally surviving, there was no such thing as thriving for me. I come from a family that I was adopted at the age of 5. So, it was just dislocated from the time. For me, I started to realize that drinking was causing a lot of my problems when I started to see that I was the common denominator in all the disruptions that was taking place in my life. Towards the end of my experience, it was coming to a point where, I was making really, really, really poor decisions. I had a happy home, I had a happy family, I had a happy marriage, and that all just came to an end for me when things just, I started to drink very late in my life properly. For me, alcoholism, now that I understand it a little bit more, was a lot to do with taking something on the outside and having to fill the soul hole. For me, it was going into gym, it was running, it was trying to fill this feeling inside of me that there was a void within me that I just couldn't fill. After I left my marriage 7 years ago, that void just just continued. For me, it just continued to be filled with the wrong things. And I was captured in the grips of alcohol. It was progressive for me. The book tells you, that this is a progressive illness. And I was blind to it. The spiritual malady was just taking over. One bottle of wine was becoming 2 bottles of wine. And then it was landing up me being in isolation because I didn't want anyone to see what was going on with me, and the spiritual malady was taking a big, big, big role in my life. For me, I really, 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 if I look back now, it played a big role in a lot of loss that I was actually causing in my life. And it was breaking me up inside, but at the same time, I just had this little internal whisper that was just saying to me, you know what, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. But I didn't understand what was happening around me. I felt like an imposter in my own body. Towards the end, I started to drink alone. It was something that, if no one saw me, then I wasn't doing it. And if I was actually being ruled by the drink. It got to a point where it was starting to happen in the mornings. It was starting to take over my work life. And my children didn't want to be with me anymore. My family, I was lying to them. I was telling them that, I couldn't come and join them. I was isolating myself. And I was happy to do that because alcohol had me in its grips. I think what happened is one day I woke up and I just had this thought that came into my mind to say, Ursula, you're going to die. Something is going to be wrong. I don't want you to die now. I phoned a friend. I said, listen, I'm not okay. And I think that was the first time that I reached out to anybody. And she was there in 10 minutes, God willing. She was there. She came, she packed my bags. She took me to the emergency room. Took them 12 hours to sober me up. It was the scariest thing that I've ever experienced. But in the same instance, when that happened, I was very relieved because I couldn't stop. On my own power, there was no ways. That cycle that they talk about in the big book where it says that you just, there is no ways that I was going to humanly stop myself. My brain was completely consumed by the alcohol. Towards the end, after that, I landed up in a facility where treatment was taking place. I remember walking down the passage to the sisters' rooms, and I just felt the sense of relief that came through me to say, it's over. I don't know how, by the grace of God, I was put there. Everybody hid from me at the time how much chaos I caused. My son said to me at that day that he said, Mom, I can't see you like this. I don't know you like this. I don't know what's happened to you, but alcohol's taken you, and I cannot be around you. And for me, that was my turning point, was standing in that facility saying, you know what, I'm in the right place. And the facility taught me a lot. It showed me, how to sort of get around or whatever else, but it didn't really fix the issue for me. When I came out of the facility, I was only there for about 12 or 20 days, and it helped to stop the drink. And somehow, somewhere, God for me works in very beautiful ways, and I do feel that grace. And there was an intervention with me. I do believe that there was something that was greater than me that was working me. I was home for a month after I came out of rehab, and the alcohol was there. I picked up that first drink. When I talk about the mental twist, it just started all over again. And something happened a month after that where some random person that I'd known from my facility phoned me and said that he needed a place to stay. Somehow I landed up on a bus with this man that I was in the city, and he said, come, we're going to take you to a friend of yours down at the sea. And I thought, you know what? I don't have anything to lose. I've got nothing up here. I'm drinking again. I'm not really sure what is going on with me. And I landed up coming down to a little place in South Africa called Hermanus, a little village down at the coast. And a friend of mine took me in. And at that stage, that's all I had left. I had my one friend, I had one bed, and I had nothing else. And she took me to my first meeting here in the AA. By the grace of God, that is the only place that I was actually allowed to go to the rooms of AA. So it would basically be me, my bed, my friend, AA. And that happened about a year and a half, 2 years ago. And she brought me in and she said, I'm taking you to a meeting. And, at that stage, I had literally in my brain just surrendered. For there, I'd started to realize, what, I have to let something else run this show because I'm not doing a good job of what it was that I was doing, oblivious to all this. The first meeting that I had at AA, I was looking at all these people and I was thinking, you guys look so happy. What's wrong with me? I didn't realize that I was suffering from a disease. I didn't realize that I was sitting in a spiritual depression. And it never dawned on me. I just thought that I was just doomed to a death. I was searching for God. I was looking for him. There was nothing. I just was so numb inside myself. I had a friend there that took me in at the AA. God bless her soul today. I think this is the grace that AA does give to me, is that I saw people there that were happy, and what I was doing in my life was not happy. There was a lady there that took me under her wing. God bless her. She described me in the beginning as a little baby that was throwing her toys out the cot the whole time. And, if I look back, she said to me, you were just screaming and shouting and protesting and resisting and not wanting to understand a new thing. But, if I have to sit back and think about it, there was nothing that I was doing that was not being beneficial to me at the time, even though I thought that life was against me at that stage. She gave me a big book and she said to me, Ush, I want you to start reading this with me. I had no clue. I just thought that this was life and this was going to be for the rest of my life. And I was just going to be a misery to everybody. And it took about 4 tries. 4 tries for me reading this book with her, and she kept coming back and she kept saying to me, come in, read the book. I attended the meetings. I listened to what people said. I heard them, but I didn't really hear them. I was kind of in my own. It was about me the whole time. Then one day I sent her a message. I think this was the 4th time. I think I'd thrown the book at her a few times after that, saying, no, I can't do this. There's no ways. I didn't understand. And eventually she just said to me, Ush, you know what? Just give me your hand. Give me your hand. Walk with me. And everyone had told me this book was an instruction manual. I was like, there is no ways. There's no instruction manuals. But obviously my thinking was the problem at the time. And eventually I just sat down and I surrendered and I said to her, okay, let's do this. 4th time lucky. Let's see how this works out. And by then I had 5 months of AA meetings and love and people around me, that were there trying to get me to just sit down and listen. And I remember the one day I was sitting with her, and eventually she became my sponsor. And she said to me, okay, let's start reading. And when I started to read the book, the chapter about more about alcoholism, I started to understand that my life was being run by something completely different. And that was a very, very profound moment for me when Bill was speaking in, also in the book about the wet brain syndrome. My mom died of that particular disease. And when I read that, I was like, there is no ways that I'm going to ride this life and land up in the same situation as that. That for me was my turning point. In the program, I had to fully concede to be an alcoholic. And by God's grace, that was the day that I sat in front of her with this little chapter of more about alcoholism. I started to understand what I was going through, how I was acting, how I was behaving, and how normal it was for me to be in that active alcoholism, untreated, running my show in the chaos. And I started to understand. And when I started reading this book, I started to realize that this book was busy showing me my life and how I'd behaving. And it was at that stage where I said, you know what, okay, I don't know. All I know is this book is telling me exactly what is wrong with me. And the more I read the book, the more I started to understand that there was a choice for me, which I never thought there was at the end of the day. I thought I was just doomed. So funny about this is that the freedom for me came when I started to realize, okay, I have a choice. I got to understand. I got to arm myself with the facts of my disease as well as the facts of me. I remember doing my fourth step in the beginning, and I was writing down, and there was this little part inside of me that just said, you know what, just be honest. It doesn't matter if you're right or if you're wrong. It just write down everything that comes, and I did that. And as I wrote that it was just a sense of freedom for me when I was writing down, when I started to realize how much chaos I had caused around me, and all of my problems were because of me. And when I started to realize that, I started to see that, the practice and the steps were actually done in a particular order for me to get to a point where every level that I was going to was a more understanding for me, and I didn't need to walk to the next chapter of the book for me to see, okay, you know what, Ush, just work on this one for now. Step 3 for me was quick. It was easy for me because I had experienced a spiritual awakening in 2012. So I knew that there was something higher than me that was running, but I was still sitting in the spiritual malady of not understanding that I could, and, I had choices. And when I took the hand of God on that third step, it was a relief. For me, it was a relief for me to see that, I didn't need to do this alone. And I was with people that God had sent me to actually go through this program with. And, and I didn't need to do this kicking and screaming. And all I needed to do was just say that prayer. And as best I could, just hand it over, however I had the power at the time to do it. And slowly but surely, it started to reveal itself, and the more I look back on my experience on the program or how I did my first round of steps, it was for me at that time enough for me to get to that point where my obsession to drink left me. I didn't stop drinking. God removed it. I remember the day that that day came where I was literally, I'd come off a big bender. The anxiety in me was so rife. And God spoke to me through a very close friend. And she said to me, you know what, I cannot watch you kill yourself anymore. And I remember looking down at the ground, and something in me said, okay, it's enough now, Urs. Go now, stop. And that was it. It was removed. I didn't have a desire to drink after that day. And it just felt like something shifted in me. It was something that came in to say, like, okay, really, you're moldable, you're teachable. Let's go. Let's do this. And that was on the 8th of November, 2022. 2022. Things started to shift from that day, the next day I landed up at a meeting, things started to make sense. It was just that there was it was just a pattern, everything that was just going on. I started to understand the book better. I started to see the words as they were coming out. I started to really listen to the people in the rooms that were sitting there going, hey, I've been holding your hand until you got to this point. I think the light in my sponsor's eye at that time was like, yay, it's time. And if I look back on that day, the best thing that I could have done is conceded to myself that yes, the soundness of mind was going to be the next thing in my life. I took my sponsor's hand. We went through the book. She took me through the steps. And it was just something just switched. There was a switch that came on when I started to read things differently. Something just, my default was to understand that this disease was taking me and that I had a choice to come back from it. And I was being prompted in a divine way for me to sit and to honestly look at myself, not in a way of remorse and in condemnation, but in a way of saying, you know what, I'm ready to fix this because I'm not going to be sitting in this space anymore. I remember sitting in the garden one day going, I'm done. I'm done. I need to be really honest. When it says when you honestly can, it did it for me. I'm not really I don't know the big book words a lot. But I do know that every time I used to have a revelation, I would phone my sponsor and she would go, oh, page 62 from the big book. And I'd be like, oh, okay. And that gave me confidence. It made me realize, you know what? These people know exactly what they're doing and I don't. And it became easy for me to start realizing that there was some kind of hope for me, and not being defiant over everything and everything. Then I after being removed, the alcohol being removed from me, I did the steps to the best of my ability. And that's all that God asked for me. I was put into the situation where I phoned my sponsor again and she said to me, Urs, I think it's time, because everything was going well. I started to work again. I started to function in the world. Things started to happen, little things started to take place for me. I started to wake up feeling good about things again. I started to see that God was working for me, and my prayers, doing the instructions of the book, doing my meditations in the morning, asking God to help me through my days, coming into my evenings, doing my meditations, the first step, I was a bit, if I have to explain it to you, I missed the point in terms of asking God. The main ingredient was sort of there, but I still had a little bit of self-will in terms of what it is that I was in charge of. And when I started doing, in the beginning of the year, my sponsor and I spoke and I said to her, look, I don't know what's going on. I feel fine. Everything's okay. But I still feel that there's something, there's just something amiss. And she said to me, Ursula, you're dying again. And I said, but how? I'm not drinking. And she said, no, that's not the point. The point is now we're at a point where we have to start living. And I was like, okay, so what do I do? Thank goodness for her. I can just thank God for her. Every time I felt like this, I pick up that spirituals toolkit, I phone, I reach out, I do the next best thing. And that day she said to me, right, we're going to go through the steps again. But this time, please, Urs, let God in. And I did. I took every spare moment that I had. I have been taking every spare moment that I have. I'm joining step studies. I'm going through it. I'm sitting on, step 8 at the moment, where I really, really let God in. This time I've put all my ingredients together. I've written down, I've been as honest as I can. I'm going all in to really, really, really work this program to the best of my ability. And the freedom and the relief that I've received, I'm just letting God do God, has been such a blessing in my life. And honestly going in and using the people around me that I have in my space that has been able to be God for me in human form, to making better choices, being around people that add value to my life, and actually starting to see the feedback that I'm receiving from people is to say, Urs, something's happened to you. Your light is switched on. What are you doing? And it's made me able to reflect a little bit and to see, the more honest I am, the more faith I have, the more teachable I can be, to sit in out of my perfectionism and, see where my defects of character is so that I can hand them over to God, so that God can work with them, so that I can stop being in charge of everything and everybody, and realizing that, I actually never have been in charge. I've always been led by God. And, having the opportunity to sit in the faith of knowing that if I do the next right thing is going to unfold in front of me. And, just sitting in watching my blessings take place, staying close to God. My perception of that sentence has changed so much since the beginning. Is, my instruction was stay close to him and do his work well. In the beginning it was, okay, I'm going to stay close to God and not drink. Now it's like I'm staying close to God, and now I am adding joy, I'm adding happiness, I'm adding, love and forgiveness into my program, so that can be my work to wherever it is that I'm going to filtrate this information to the next person. What this program has taught me is that I don't need a stick to beat myself. I don't need to give myself a hard time if I get things wrong. My relationships have become better. They are quality relationships now. It's not run on self-will. I work on God's will, and it took a long time for me to understand what that actually meant. But that to me was listening to myself, listening to love, listening to understanding, taking other people into consideration and not just making it all about me. Because if I did that, I was just going to cause a tornado of rubbish around me, which was a frightful thing. My beliefs have changed through the program, because as I was receiving, my awakenings that I've had have been revelations in terms of understanding that things around me are not I'm not in control of anything like that. It's relieved me of that experience. I don't need to fight anymore. I can actually just sit in a place of serenity. I remember the one day during the second round of steps that I've been doing now, waking up one morning and I was pain-free, like completely pain-free, but it wasn't that pain that you get, sort of physical pain. It was an emotional pain that I'd just been carrying for so many years. And I woke up one morning and it was gone. And, at that stage I was in prayer quite a lot. And I said, God, what happened? Why I'm not feeling this discontent. I'm not feeling any of this pain that, there's no restlessness anymore. There's just a sense of peace. And it came to me that I'd moved from a place of anxiety into a place of agency. I had to go Google that word because I didn't know what agency meant at the time, but it was such a relief. to actually feel that and to know that I was just taking one step at a time to get to that point where that happened to me. And I had no business knowing what that was about. All I knew was that this program was working. This program was working for me. My sponsors were holding my hand. My brothers and my sisters from the fellowship were there watching me grow. And I really, really, really did feel that emotionally, physically, and mentally, I was starting to come together. And still today, I still feel that there's obviously something really, really bigger at play here that I actually know. Things that I've learned now these days is that I just don't judge myself anymore. I don't judge people anymore. I kind of ride the day as the day goes. As long as I know that I've got God close to me and I'm doing his work well, that his work is love, joy, forgiveness. And the more I do that, the more I respond. And the more I respond, the more God responds. And I'm just grateful for the opportunity that I've been able to see that that there was a choice for me. And, God knew what to take away and God knew what to give to me. So I could get to that point where I wasn't a slave to my misery and alcohol was just not running my show anymore. And, I'm just hoping that somebody can take something from this message. I'm really still new at the sharing thing. So, that's pretty much what I can give out if there's any questions.
Thank you, Ursula. Hi, it's Karen here from Reco12, having my weekly technical glitches. Thank you so much for sharing your beautiful story. I wrote down a few questions while you were speaking. I want you to share with us, if you will. Yeah, welcome. Your fellows speak highly of you and your recovery journey.
Thank you.
Imagine you went through the steps once and then your sponsor said, okay, take two, this time let God in. What did that look like for you? Can you elaborate on that? What was different that second time? How did you let him in? What was different between the first time and the second?
I think my perception changed. For me, I felt like if I go back to my second time, my sponsor said to me, okay, now we're going to change the word drinking to the word thinking. And there I felt the shift come in, and there I could let God in, because then I could understand that my alcoholism wasn't from the drinking. It was actually all the underlying stuff that was underneath that. And as soon as my perception changed of an all-round thing for me it sort of happened where I had to let my thinking disappear and I had to let God in. And that organically happened for me. I started to go to a lot more step 1 book studies. I started to go to step 2 book studies, and really taking every day into the big book and saying, right, you know what? If this something is going to change, God, show me where I can go. And that was the most powerful thing for me, was to just let God show me. And God showed me to the right book studies. God showed me to the right people. God showed me the right questions. And as soon as I started to get that momentum, it started to just unfold for me. And then when I got to the agnostics section of the book, I had a very big, profound experience where I started to realize that I can't explain it to anybody. I wish I could just bottle up that understanding of how I felt when that understanding. I was like, I will never know the whole. For me, it was like I wanted to know why the sun's chemicals the way that they were. There were so many questions inside of me, and something inside of me says, just stop it, and just go with what it is that you have inside of you, and that is God. And that's what happened to me. As soon as I did that and I let God in, miracles happened for me in terms of my transitions and my step work.
Amazing. Now talk to me about how you do that daily. What do you do daily to let him in?
So what I do daily is in the morning I wake up and it's devotion time. It was one thing that I did start to do after the third step experience that I had was open up my other good book. That was unbelievable for me because it sets my day. Then from there, I have got now established step studies that I do during my day. I am in constant prayer and meditation. I have realized that if I am not plugged into God, all hell breaks loose in my life, and I start to think. And that's where all things fall apart, is when I start to think that I'm running the show again. And then, yes, as the day goes by, I start to, I started to realize that the spiritual principles for me started to make a little bit more sense. And when they say, insane becomes sanity, or something in the book that talks about that, common sense becomes uncommon sense. That started to make a little bit more of understanding for me to know that I will never know. So I just ride my day in prayer. I kind of bless every single person that I'm with. I start to understand that they also have feelings, and it makes it easier for me to just care for other people, which that point I was just missing so many times. And the revelations just keep coming.
Cool. That is so cool that you're saying that, because I see that with some addicts in my family. When we go through the workbook, did you work the workbook, the 12 Steps in 4 Hours workbook?
Yes, I did. Yes.
Amazing. So a lot of times, my sponsees will ask, what does it mean unthinking, or apathetic? And I think that's an interesting thing that happens to addicts, is we're so selfish, as the big book says, that like somebody could be in the oncology ward, somebody could be dying, and like our feelings are numbed out by that total selfishness and self-involvement that fluctuates between total arrogance, which of course covers up deep insecurity. So I love that you said that, because it's like, that's like the huge miracle that's so small, is like, I care. When my coworker tells me she's battling with depression, like I shed a tear, before. I don't know. I remember when I was in the grips of codependency during COVID, and people were like intubated, and I was just so busy with my own problems that, so that's one of those things that are on our character defects list. We shift from being uncaring to being caring. We shift from being selfish to being others focused. Speaking of others, tell us, do you mind sharing a little bit about your personal life, your work? Certainly, I know we have mommies who listen to this weekly recovery podcast. I'm a mommy, how your motherhood has changed, how your coworkerhood has changed, how you interact with society now that you've had a change in your thinking.
Yes. While for me, with my children, I find that I have a loving relationship with them now. So it's not all about me. So when I phone them, it's about them. Me making amends has been, I'm more concerned about how they are. I'm not in my misery anymore. I'm not thinking about how sad I am. I'm not thinking about how life is just so, boring and it's sitting in my own head. And because I ask them how they're doing, I'm genuinely, really, really, really wanting to find out how they're doing and how they are as human beings. And that side of me has presented for them to become vulnerable to me. Alcohol took away a lot of time with my children. They say that your motherly instinct should reign first in my life. Alcohol just took that away completely. And when I was, in recovery, it's easier for me to be open with my children now. It's easier for me to speak to them about things that matter. If something in my day is happy and there's a flower that's really pretty for me, I share it. And it's not just with my kids that I'm having the same kind of revelations with. It's also my ex-husband. You know, one of the things that I had to deal with was the fact that I actually burnt down a perfectly good marriage. And I had no idea that I was doing that. And the program teaches me that my vulnerability and openness and honesty actually does work. And, you know, they say in the 7th step, you know, do the thing that you don't want to do and don't do the thing that you do want to do. And for me, honesty and vulnerability was a big, big, big character defect. And when I did start to become honest with people, especially with him, I started to realize, but hey, he's actually responding to me and he's being vulnerable and he's asking me for help and I'm asking him for help. And not just with him, but also with everybody around me. Is the more real and honest I became with myself and the more I tapped into my God, everything else around me seemed to be working. You know, my work colleagues, if I, you know, caring for them, you know, I've been put into a position where I come from a very high profile background of corporate work. I worked in big offices. I've done multinational businesses and all that stuff. Today, I waitress in the little village. And for me, it's not even about the fact that, my ego would have turned around and said, oh, you know, this is such a really rubbish job and all that stuff. I'm very grateful today because what God did with me is it took away all the outer worldly things. And it said to me, now we're gonna rearrange all your furniture inside you. We're going to take all your emotions. We're going to do all these things. We're going to bring everything into an alignment again. And that's how we're going to run our shows. So the things that were important to me before are not anymore. Now for me, being honest with people, being honest with myself, loving people, sharing humility, which was a big one for me because my pride was all over the place. And and when I just turned back in and I was being humbled to a point where it wasn't just about me. This was about God, everything that I was doing, and today I have a different understanding about where my day takes me. I go to work. I just enjoy the work for what it is. If I speak to someone on the phone, I am present with them on the phone. If I'm speaking to someone at lunch, I'm really there. I'm not sitting in a spiritual melody anymore. I'm actually focused on the other person and how important they are to me and how grateful I am that they are in my life, which was never there before. And the more I do that, the more I see people reach out to me and say, you know what? Wow, Ush, you've really worked hard on yourself to get to this point, to accept yourself. And yeah, that's where it's taken me in every single aspect of my life.
Unbelievable. I mean, you said a lot there. That was really a mouthful. I want to go back to the first thing you said about going from the corporate world and being a waitress. I relate to that. I went from corporate to nonprofit, making a difference with a salary cut in many multiples of percentages. So I relate to that personally. And this goes to the promise in the big book. Like Ursula was saying, her sponsor constantly took her to the big book that fear of financial insecurity leaves us. So it doesn't mean that she's not promised a certain amount of money, but in recovery and working a spiritual program, she's not afraid to do something that bold, from going to be a corporate hotshot to being a waitress in the village, And, in my world, that was from working in the for-profit world and high tech and advertising, going in the nonprofit world, because my job is to be of maximum service. My job is to be helpful to my fellows, to humankind, to my higher power, to my family. And Ursula and I, we live in different countries. We're probably different religions, and we both have the same job description. So fear of financial insecurity will leave us. That's one thing you're hearing. The next thing for big book that Ursula's saying is that when we straighten out spiritually, we straighten out physically and mentally. And the big book also says that other people will often notice this before we do. I heard that in everything you were saying, that people were like, hey, you've got that glow or whatever. Like, Bill says about Abby, I believe it was in the big book. They're noticing that, the high pro glow, and a throwback to an old Purina commercial in the U.S. Straighten out physically, mentally, more awake, more alert. But it all starts with the spiritual. Do you want to share more about how you straighten out physically and mentally? I mean, I know for me that means I go to yoga, to Pilates, to sculpting. I eat healthy. I do outdoor activities to connect with God, with nature. I make sure to have. You spoke about having friends who are productive. I'm friends with people who do healthy things, who are lifestyle kind of people. I have a good friend who's like a tour guide. She knows every hike in Israel. So this is a good friend for me to have. It's helpful to me because I get to God and I get to nature. Maybe share a little bit about that.
Certainly. So for me, when things started to straighten out spiritually for me, I started to act differently. I don't eat because it's sweet foods or whatever. I'm very mindful about what it is that I do. If my barometer, my internal barometer has shifted. So if I feel something is good in my life, I kind of shift into that way. I can detect when it is that I'm feeling restless, and then I know, okay, Ursh, it's time for a walk at the beach. It's kind of like I get led to the places that bring me that soul food. Walking on the beach, phoning friends, finding out how they're doing. Sending an I love you to somebody, happy birthdays, which I never did before. And paying back into my own system, paying back into the right system, into the spiritual system. The spiritual principles, sitting with them and letting my life be led by those. For me, I consider myself an extremely wealthy person because I do mindfully present myself and other people with, little snippets of love. When we eat, I will make sure that I will, present something to the table, which was never there before. I was super selfish when it came to that type of thing. I would just get there and just like, okay, these people just want my space, which was wrong. I didn't see things clearly, and I was, now what I do is I'll go for the walk and I will appreciate the sea for that, and thanking God through every single step that I take, because if it wasn't for God, I would not be here right now. And, and my mindset has changed. There's been a shift in how it is that I perceive things. My perception, my magnifying glass that they talk about in the big book has completely shifted. And all I was told by my sponsor was just look up to God. Just look up to God. Don't worry about anything else inside your life. Do that. Just look up to God. If something happens to you, just thank. If if you're eating something, just say thank you. Be grateful for what it is that's there. And that's really changed my perception of what abundance means, fulfillment, joy. I was saying to my sponsor this yesterday morning, I woke up and I had this real revelation where I was feeling this a massive amount of joy inside of me. And I was like, I don't know. For me, joy was what was on a postcard or a Christmas card or someone's wall. When they talk about hope, joy, and love, it was something that I saw on a wall. I didn't realize until yesterday that happy, joyous, free actually is a feeling. And I shared that with her, and she said to me, this is the magic of the program. It's to get to that point where I said to her, it doesn't matter. And everything doesn't need to be perfect around me, but I feel inside me that the feeling of happy, the feeling of joy, the feeling of free in my health, in my relationships, in my finance. My concept of each of these things has changed so much, through this profound experience of the second round of steps that I've done.
Amazing. Let's close off with you sharing about working with others. Do you have sponsees? Do you take people through the 12 steps? And then pray us out. Share with us about that, and then please pray us out.
Okay, so at the moment, we do lots of outreach here in Hermanus. The village is quite small. So I'd reach out. I do a lot of reach out. I do a lot of step 12 12-step calls, which is your beginning. My sponsors got me going there. It helps me to help me, and it helps God to help them. And yes, I do sponsor. It's still beginning, early stages. I think God's got me on the humility bus right now, but I'm willing. If that makes if that makes any, it always just lands up being willing. Okay.
If you're willing, I might have a good sponsee for you. So
thank you.
Why you don't? It's hard to get sponsees there. What about online? There are so many people looking.
Yes, there is. I think at the beginning, I have been asking about, is it normal for people to come in and just leave after the first or second step? And that is apparently very normal. But for me, I think my experience it's coming, it's growing. It's the more I work the book with people, the more I do 12-step calls. God will present it to me when I'm ready and when they're ready. So I do have the faith that it will be like that for me.
Okay, I have a good idea for you. I think I have a customer for you. So.
Okay, thank you so much.
It'll be more than ready. Amazing. Okay, so ready and willing. And if the offer presents, make sure to let people know you're available on those online meetings, in person, and WhatsApp groups, because most of my sponsors are around the world. A lot of them I haven't met. Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing your service. Anyone who wants to share on Reco12 you can go to Reco12.com to check out previous podcasts. If you'd like to pay your seventh tradition and participate, contribute, go to Reco12.com/support, and you can help support our Zoom costs by PayPal or Venmo. And make sure to listen to our shares. We've got Noodle It Out with Nikki. We've got the Big Book Roundtable. We've got Reco12, and we've got Afro-Euro Reco12. Ursula, maybe put your contact info in the chat if anyone wants to reach out to you. And please pray us out. Everybody have a beautiful, light-filled day.
Thank you so much, Karen. Really appreciate the opportunity. Father of light, thank you for showing up for me. Thank you for guiding me when I couldn't guide myself. Thank you for the gift of grace and kisses of mercy. Thank you for your ever-loving and understanding love and patience. Thank you for this second chance to walk hand in hand with you. Amen.
Standing still a moment, carving out this time, reflecting on the landscape of this life of mine. Peaks too high to conquer, streams too wide to cross, troughs too deep to walk through without incurring loss. Yet here I am, still standing tall, despite the rough terrain. One like me survived the storms and walked through wind and rain. Still standing, I will fight the good fight, still searching for glimmers of light, feet still on the ground. I can still be found, standing still.
My wings are torn and tattered, but I know I still can fly. I may not soar unfettered, I may not rise too high.
Record it in the book of life and bind it with the seal that I am bowed and broken, I am standing still.
Only God knows where the path
tonight.